Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to True Crime Sleep Stories. I'm your host, and tonight I am deep in the woods, luckily from a safe vantage point. My current geographical location, nestled in this quiet forested haven, has me pondering why we humans have always seen the woods as both profoundly calming and peaceful, and yet so undeniably creepy and mysterious. In the daytime, we stand in wonder at nature's gentle embrace. Sunlight filters through the canopy of greenery, illuminating the magical fungi that bloom on ancient tree trunks when the climate, moisture, and weather align in perfect harmony for them to thrive. Birds sing their unique, melodic songs that echo softly through the trees. Small animals rustle the underbrush and snap twigs underfoot, leaving us wondering, was that a graceful deer passing by, or perhaps something far more elusive, like Bigfoot or an escaped convict? These are the sights and sounds we simply can't experience anywhere else. The rich, earthy scent of moss and soil, dappled light dancing on ferns, and that rare feeling of total isolation wrapped in perfect serenity. But at night, everything shifts. In the pitch-black void where you can't see even 10 feet ahead, the same woods transform. Hideout spots multiply in the shadows. Danger seems to lurk just beyond the tree line, and the nocturnal world stirs with unseen life. Our imaginations run wild in that darkness, and sometimes the truth can be stranger and far more terrifying than any fiction we could dream up. Tonight we'll explore how those whispering fears can turn very real. But first, we will pause for a quick word from our sponsors before diving into tonight's tales. Welcome back to True Crime Sleep Stories. Perhaps our fascination and fear of the woods began in the ancient legends and lore that have whispered through the trees for centuries. Long before true crime headlines ever captured our attention, humanity wove stories of forest spirits, mysterious beings that guard the wild places, blurring the delicate line between wonder and warning. Take the Leshy of Slavic folklore, that shape-shifting master of the woods. He stands tall as the tallest ancient trees one moment, then shrinks small as the moss beneath your feet the next. With bark like skin and eyes that glow like distant embers in the twilight, the Leshy protects the forest's sacred balance. To those who enter with respect, gathering only what they need and honoring the green world, he might quietly guide lost wanderers back to safety. But to those who harm the trees, overstep the bounds, or treat the woods with arrogance, he reveals his trickster side, leading travelers in endless, disorienting circles, mimicking the voices of loved ones to lure them deeper into the shadows, or causing them to vanish forever into the emerald embrace. Then there are the Kodama, the gentle yet solemn tree spirits of Japanese tradition. These ethereal souls dwell deep within the hearts of ancient trees, appearing as soft glowing orbs or faint ghostly figures shimmering among the leaves. They are the very heartbeat and memory of the old-growth forest. To disturb their home, to cut down their tree, is to invite misfortune, lingering illness, streaks of bad luck, or whispers of something far worse, as if the woods themselves are alive, watching and remembering every slight. These timeless tales, passed down through generations of women gathering herbs in dappled clearings, families huddled close by crackling fires, and storytellers beneath starlit canopies, remind us how the forest has always felt profoundly alive and sometimes quietly watchful. Now that we've lingered in the myths and legends that spark our wildest thoughts, let us gently turn to the realm of true crime. Come with me as we drift further into the deep woods, where the trees stand sentinel over isolated homes, cabins, farms, and cottages far from the nearest neighbor. These places promise solitude and serenity, but sometimes they conceal unimaginable darkness. Tonight, we'll visit several such sanctuaries where ordinary people sought peace only to encounter the ultimate isolation. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the forest whispers carry you through these tales. The first case we will linger on tonight is that of Stephen Kubacki, the skier who vanished and returned. In the winter of 1978, a young man named Stephen Kubacki set out for what should have been a routine cross-country ski trip near Lake Michigan. The 23-year-old Hope College student was last seen heading out alone on February 19th. When he didn't return, a search began. Snowmobilers soon found his skis and backpack placed neatly side by side along the shore near Saugatuck, Michigan. Clear footprints in the snow led straight out onto the frozen lake for roughly 200 yards before stopping abruptly. There was no sign of broken ice, struggle, or any return tracks. Authorities concluded he had likely fallen through the ice and drowned, though his body was never recovered. Then, 15 months later, on May 5th, 1979, Kubacki suddenly woke up in a field in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, more than 700 miles away. He had no recollection of the missing time. He was dressed in unfamiliar clothes and carrying a backpack filled with travel maps, hitchhiking signs, and items indicating he had journeyed across the country, including stops in Sacramento, Reno, Utah, and Wisconsin. He even had a marathon t-shirt from a race in Wisconsin and a new pair of glasses. Reading a newspaper, he realized over a year had passed. Kubacki eventually made his way home to Michigan. He declined extensive psychiatric evaluation and has spoken very little publicly about the lost year. He later became a clinical psychologist. To this day, the mystery of where he went and what happened during those 15 months remains unexplained, one of the most extraordinary cases of a missing person returning in the history of wilderness disappearances. While Kubacki's story ended with an inexplicable return, many who vanish in remote areas leave behind only questions, grief, and lingering fear. Sometimes the isolation of a wooded setting hides something far more sinister, as we see in the heartbreaking events at a summer camp for young girls. Next, the tragic Oklahoma Girl Scout murders at Camp Scott. In the quiet woods of Mays County, Oklahoma, Camp Scott was meant to be a place of joy and friendship for young girls during the summer of 1977. Among those excited campers were 3 bright young souls from Broken Arrow: 8-year-old Lori Lee Farmer, 9-year-old Michelle Heather Goose, and 10-year-old Doris Denise Milner. On the evening of June 12th, they settled into tent number 7, the farthest from the counselor's area, for what should have been a peaceful first night under the stars. A thunderstorm passed through as they slept. The next morning, around 6 o'clock, a counselor made the heartbreaking discovery. The 3 girls were found about 150 yards away on a trail leading toward the showers. They had been taken from their tent and tragically murdered. The remote, wooded setting of the camp, meant to foster adventure and independence, instead became the backdrop for an unimaginable loss. Earlier that spring, a threatening note had been discovered in a counselor's belongings, warning of harm to 3 girls in tent number 7. It was sadly dismissed as a prank. A large red flashlight with a smudged fingerprint and a footprint from a size 9.5 shoe were later found at the scene, but these clues would not bring immediate answers. Local authorities focused their investigation on Jean Leroy Hart, a Cherokee Nation member and escaped convict with a history of serious crimes. He was arrested and tried in 1979. After hearing the evidence, a jury acquitted him. Hart continued serving time on other convictions and passed away in prison in 1979 from a heart attack. Subsequent DNA testing, including advanced analysis in 2017, has strongly suggested his involvement, yet the case officially remains unsolved to this day. The families of Lori, Michelle, and Doris carried profound grief. Lori's father, Richard Guse, became a tireless advocate, helping pass the Oklahoma Victims' Bill of Rights and supporting the Oklahoma Crime Victims' Compensation Board. Sherry Farmer, Lori's mother, founded the Oklahoma chapter of Parents of Murdered Children to provide comfort to others facing similar loss. Their courage in the face of such tragedy continues to honor the memory of these 3 precious girls. In the years since, the remote woods of Camp Scott have stood as a solemn reminder of how quickly safety can slip away in isolated places and how deeply the loss of innocent young lives echoes through time. Tragedies in summer camps remind us how even organized wilderness settings can leave the vulnerable exposed. National parks with their vast remote meadows and trails can hide similar horrors, sometimes quite literally, as in our next case from Yosemite. Case 3. The Severed Hand in Yosemite National Park. In the summer of 1983, a family enjoying a peaceful day in Yosemite National Park made a discovery that would haunt investigators for nearly 4 decades. While exploring the scenic beauty of Summit Meadow off Glacier Point Road, one of the children came across a severed human hand and forearm. The remains appeared to have been preserved by winter conditions and recently exposed as the snow melted. Despite thorough searches of the surrounding wooded meadow and nearby areas, no other body parts were found at that time. 5 years later, in 1988, a skull missing its jawbone was discovered not far from the original site. Forensic efforts to identify the victim through missing persons reports and facial reconstructions yielded no answers. For years, she remained known only as the Summit Meadow Jane Doe, a quiet enigma in one of America's most beloved national parks. Advanced DNA technology finally brought her name to light in 2022. The remains belonged to Patricia Hicks, a woman in her late 20s who had grown up in Washington state. Friends and family described her as someone seeking purpose after personal hardships, including the tragic suicide of her older brother when she was a teenager. After a brief marriage that ended, Patricia moved to Merced, California, in the early 1980s and became involved with a small cult-like group led by Donald Eugene Gibson. Gibson, who worked as a bookkeeper and occasional yoga instructor, had gathered a handful of followers. In 1981, he was convicted of sexually assaulting several teenage boys, with prosecutors alleging he used LSD to disorient them. While awaiting sentencing, Gibson was released on bond, but failed to appear for court, and disappeared, possibly fleeing to Mexico. He was never located. Investigators explored whether Patricia's association with the group played a role in her death, perhaps as retaliation after Gibson's conviction. Around 1982, according to friends, she boarded a bus from Merced to Yosemite and was never seen again. The timing of her disappearance aligns with estimates that she died sometime between the fall of 1981 and the spring of 1983. Another name also surfaced in connection with the case: Henry Lee Lucas, one of the most notorious confessed serial killers of the era. During his period of making hundreds of confessions, Lucas spoke with Yosemite investigators. Though he could not recall the park's name, he described picking up a young female hitchhiker between Fresno and the area, sharing a meal of fried chicken and beer, and later claiming responsibility for her death. Investigators located a possible matching campsite with chicken bones and crushed beer cans. Lucas provided details that had never been released publicly. However, given his pattern of false confessions and the circumstantial nature of the evidence, his involvement could not be definitively proven. Lucas died in prison in 2001. Despite these intriguing leads, the cult connection, and Lucas's statements, the murder of Patricia Hicks remains officially unsolved. Her identification was a breakthrough achieved through forensic genetic genealogy, connecting distant relatives through DNA. Yet the isolation of that scenic wooded meadow in Yosemite concealed the full story of how her life ended, leaving her loved ones and investigators with more questions than answers after nearly 40 years. From meadows in California to the mighty rapids of the Grand Canyon, remote wilderness continues to claim those who venture into it. Our final story involves a young couple whose adventurous honeymoon became one of the canyon's most enduring mysteries. Case 4. Glen and Bessie Hyde, the vanishing newlyweds in the Grand Canyon. In the fall of 1928, a young couple set out on what they hoped would be the adventure of a lifetime. Glen and Bessie Hyde, newlyweds, planned a daring honeymoon journey down the Green and Colorado rivers through the Grand Canyon. Glen, an experienced river runner from Idaho, had built their sturdy wooden scow by hand. Their goal was ambitious: to set a new speed record for navigating the canyon while allowing Bessie to become the first known woman to complete the full descent. At just 22 years old, Bessie was less seasoned on the water than her husband, but she embraced the challenge with quiet determination. The couple launched from Green River, Utah on October 20th. For several weeks, they made steady progress through the dramatic landscapes. On November 16th, they paused their journey and hiked out to the South Rim, where they visited the Kolb brothers' studio. Photographer Emery Kolb welcomed them warmly, took their portrait, and later recalled that Bessie had confided some doubts about continuing. She spoke of feeling tired of the trip and wanting to go home, while also mentioning that Glen had grown somewhat impatient with her. Kolb offered them a place to rest for the winter, but Glen declined. As they prepared to head back down into the canyon, Bessie admired the dress of Kolb's young daughter and reportedly sighed, "I wonder if I shall ever wear pretty shoes again." That was one of the last confirmed sightings of the couple. They were seen again on November 18th, boating away downriver below Hermit Rapid. Then they simply vanished. When the Hydes failed to arrive in Needles, California, as expected, Glen's father organized a search. On December 19th, rescuers spotted their scow floating near River Mile 237. The boat was upright and completely intact with all supplies still secured, Bessie's diary tucked safely inside, and her camera present. The final entries and photographs suggested the couple had continued making good progress. No signs of struggle or capsizing were evident on the vessel itself. Despite extensive searches along the river and canyon rims, no trace of Glen or Bessie was ever found. Historian Otis R. Marston, who extensively studied Colorado River history, concluded that the most likely explanation was a tragic accident in the powerful rapids near River Mile 232. He noted that submerged rocks in that stretch had damaged or capsized many boats over the years, and it was possible the couple had been swept overboard without warning. Over the decades, the story of Glen and Bessie Hyde has inspired countless theories and captured public imagination. Some have speculated about foul play within the marriage, wondering if tensions noted at the Kolb studio escalated. Others have pondered whether Bessie, overwhelmed or in conflict with Glen, might have taken drastic action. In 1971, during a commercial rafting trip, a woman claimed to be Bessie Hyde, stating she had killed her abusive husband in self-defense and escaped to start a new life. She later admitted the story was fabricated, but it added another layer to the enduring mystery. Rumors also swirled around photographer Emery Kolb after a human skeleton with a bullet wound was found on his property. Forensic analysis later determined it belonged to a different individual, a suicide victim from 1933, ruling out any direct connection. Still, such details kept the case alive in books, documentaries, and discussions. To this day, the disappearance of Glen and Bessie Hyde remains one of the Grand Canyon's most poignant unsolved mysteries. Their boat, preserved with their personal belongings, stands as a silent testament to a young couple's dreams and the unforgiving power of the wilderness they sought to conquer. In the quiet isolation of those towering canyon walls and rushing waters, their story reminds us how quickly adventure can turn to lasting silence. From the inexplicable return of a skier on frozen shores to brutal crimes in a wooded summer camp, partial remains in a national park meadow, and the vanishing of adventurous newlyweds on a wild river, these stories illustrate how isolation in forests, parks, and wilderness areas can lead to disappearances and tragedies that defy easy explanation. Whether through the raw power of nature, human actions, or a combination of both, these remote places continue to hold their secrets close. Thank you for joining us in the dark for these haunting tales of isolation and mystery. Please tune in next time as we explore more stories where the shadows hold their secrets just a little too well. True Crime Sleep Stories is hosted and created by Kelly Brink, produced with the support of our dedicated team. Subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform to help us keep telling these haunting tales. Visit patreon.com/KellyBrink for exclusive content and to join our community. Thank you for listening, and we'll meet you in the shadows next time. Until then, stay safe out there and lock your doors. Good night.